Movement of focus position. I mean, focus position mean the important position that we want to convey in our sentence. So again, we deal with movement. It extraposition. What is it extraposition? For example, if you look at this text, it arouses indignation that some night workers at British Leyland's Rover factory in Solihull are in the regular habit of sleeping for a large part of their shift. But on whom should the indignation be vented? From the beginning of time, it has been accepted, and so on, so on. If you look at the sentence, but on whom should the indignation be vented, it's a passive sentence. And the next sentence too, from the beginning of time, it has been accepted that. So it's again a passive sentence. Though we'll deal with also the that clause, but let's look at first passive sentences. So extra, it extraposition in passive sentences. So a very common pattern in text above is it plus passive verb plus that clause. You have just seen, I read the sentences for you, right? It, then we have a passive verb, and then we have a that clause. It is said that, for example. In the second paragraph, for example, we find from the beginning of time, it has been accepted that men who are on duty during the night will be tempted to sleep. So, if we look at this again, we have it, and then a passive verb has been accepted, and then a that clause, that men who are on duty, right? So it is assumed that nothing but will prevent them from going to sleep. Again, the same example. What is the subject of these two sentences, sentence 1 and sentence 2? Because the subject, the subject of the passive sentence is it, right? And we do not find any by phrase in these sentences which could tell us the agent, and we could assume that it must have been the subject of the active sentence. So the subject of the main clause is obviously it, since SAI is subject, auxiliary, inversion affects the order of it, and the auxiliary has or it. For example, has it been? So we can say that it is the subject, though it's a passive subject, but subject of the sentence. This SAI has shown us. Similarly, in the second sentence, we find the same thing. Since the verb is in the passive, has been accepted, is assumed, we should be able to reconstruct the sentence underlying the passive active string, because we know that every passive sentence is constructed on an active sentence. So indeed, the active sentence corresponding to 1 and 2 may be something like, everyone has accepted that men who are one assumed. So we can bring indefinite pronoun like everyone and one, right? Because the nature of the sentence refers to such as subject, which refers to a lot of people. So everyone or one. So the choice of the item everyone and one as underlying subject NPs in 5 and 6 is fairly arbitrary. Of course, some other general noun phrase can also be used instead of, we can say people, right? The subject NP of 5, 6 are absent from the corresponding passive sentence. There is no by phrase, agent phrase in 1 and 2. So bracketing the constituent can tell us that subject NP everyone, we have VP which is has accepted, and that man, and we have embedded sentence S bar, and who will be, it is the modifying to the man. That class S bar is a complement to the verb and function as direct object. So we can have the passive of the same sentence, right? So we can have everyone has active of the same sentence, everyone has accepted the fact. So the fact has been put in the place of the sentence bar, that men who will be tempted to sleep. So pseudo clustering can also tell us the structure of the sentence. What everyone has done is except that man who are on there. So we can know that VP except main verb, and this main verb, this is a transitive verb, this can have that man as a direct object. So it's possible to use the auxiliary have as substitute for the whole VP. So for example, we can have the sentence intent, everyone has accepted that men who are on duty during the night will be tempted to sleep, but John hasn't. So hasn't also then tells us that it's the substitute for the whole VP, because but John has, we can bring the whole has accepted the man, etc. Right? So if the that clause is the direct object of have, then under passivization it should become the subject of passivized sentence. We know that if there is an element which is direct object, it can also be made subject of a passive sentence. So we can say that men who are on duty during the night will be tempted to sleep has been accepted by everyone. It's optional, right? So we can know that that man, that clause is the direct object of our sentence, as it can be the subject of the passive sentence. However, 11 is not a very elegant sentence. That is the point. There is something wrong with the balance between subject and predicate. The subject is very heavy and VP following it relatively short. So this is a very important aspect of stylistic as well, that sentence should not be that longer, right? So for these purpose, to make it shorter and make it a point of focus, we shift the, or we make certain movements, right? We get rather a lot of information at the beginning of the sentence, while in English the focus of attention in a sentence is usually towards the end of the sentence. This is very important. Again, it is for the reason that 11 should be preferably be converted into 12. So it has been 12 is it has been accepted that men who are on duty during the night will be tempted to sleep. So this is how we have made the movement of focus, the focus position, that the information is being given to the end of the sentence, right? The two operations are involved in converting 1 into 12. The subject clause with that is shifted to rightwards toward the end of the sentence, one thing, and it is inserted into the vacated subject position. So this is what extraposition is known, or movement of focus position means. The structure of sentence 12 may now be assumed by up as following: IT, which is the subject, V, passive verb, and then we have sentence par, embedded sentence, and subject, etc. In 12, the moved that clause in 12 the moved that clause gives content or meaning to it. The two are linked and are said to form a chain. So the movement transformation which shifts the that clause rightwards in the sentence is called extraposition. The combination of extraposition plus it insertion is referred to as it extraposition. So it's very much important, so that we could bring the constituent into focus position in a sentence, and focus position is generally towards the end of the sentence.